Hi, this is Meganadha. In this video, we're going to learn about control structures in C#. So let's see the agenda for today's lecture. First, we will start about what are control structures, and we will discuss on control structures classification into branching and looping, and we will see which category comes under branching and which category comes under looping. And then we will learn about simple C# programs using these control structures, which we are going to learn in this lecture. And we will also see the introduction about the next lecture. And then at the end, you will be having a link for taking quiz application on these topics that we are going to learn in this video. And the link for the quiz, you can find it in the description section of this YouTube video. So let's get started with control structures. So control structures will help us to write the logic or to write the business flow of an application. So these are categorized into two types. One is branching and looping. So in case if you want to take some decision based on multiple options, then we have to go for branching. And in case if you want to iterate some logic by multiple times, then we go for looping. Let's take a simple example for branching. So if you want to check whether the number is even number or an odd number, then you have to write an if condition. So you have two options here. So first, if the number is divisible by 2, that's an even number. If the number is not divisible by 2, that's an odd number. So here you're taking one option based on two options, so that is called branching. So, and coming to looping, let's take for example, I want to print hello 5 times, or I want to find multiplication table of a given number. So in that case, you have to multiply the number from 1 to 10 n number of times. So you're looping and you're doing the same task multiple times, so that is considered as looping. Okay, so let's see some examples for branching and looping. So if condition, if else condition, if else if else condition, switch case, and conditional operator. So all these constitute branching, where we take one decision based on multiple options that are available. Whereas for loop, while loop, and do while loop are used for iteration purpose, and these are categorized into looping. Okay, so let's see some simple example for branching. So branching is used for selecting one option from multiple options. So normally used for decision making. Okay, simple example is to check whether the number is even number or odd number, we use branching. So if the condition is true, it is an even number. If the condition is false, it's an odd number. Okay, so let's see a simple example for branching. I'm going to open Visual Studio and I'm going to create file, new project, and I'm selecting console application and click on OK. Now I'm using Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition, which you can notice here, help, about Microsoft Visual Studio, and you can see that I'm using Visual Studio 2015 Community Edition. So now let's say this. Now I'm going to declare a variable. So int input or int input number is equal to 10, and I need to check whether the number is even number or not. If input number modulo 2 is equal to 0. Remember, in if condition we use double equal to check whether the two numbers are equal or not. I'm going to print here. So now console.writeLine, I'm going to write here even number, and now I'm going to write here else console.writeLine, it's an odd number. Okay, and now we'll use console.readLine for at the end. So console.readLine. Anyway, so now if you see here, first we are checking whether this modulo division input number is 10. If 10 modulo 2 is 0, we are printing as even number, else the number as odd number. Okay, so now if you see, let's take 6 modulo 2, the remainder will be 0, and let's take 8 modulo 2, the remainder will be 0, or let's take 7 modulo 2, the remainder will be 1. So in case if the number is divisible by 2, we are printing this as odd even number, else it's an odd number. So here we have two options based on the condition. We have two outputs, and this is like branching, and we are selecting one option based on the condition. So this categorized into branching. Okay, so now let's see how the flow happens. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. If you want to put a breakpoint, you just need to click on the leftmost section here like this. See, now I just added a breakpoint and I removed a breakpoint, added a breakpoint. Now run the program. Now it's taking some time to execute. Okay, now you can see that the breakpoint has been hit. So now what you need to do is you need to press F10. So see here, input number, when I move the mouse on the when I move the cursor here, you can notice that the input number is showing as 10. Input number is showing as 10 and 10 modulo 2 is 0. Now the condition, if I press F10, I need to press F10 for debugging. Let me press F10. Now you can see that the condition is satisfied and it is printing even number and it went to the last statement, and now you can see the output here as even number. Okay, so this is a simple example for branching and this illustrates if else condition. Now let's take, for example, I want to print, if I enter 0, as per this code 0 modulo 2 is 0, it will print even number. So there is a lot of debate that's happening whether the 0 is even number or not. So let's try to modify this code. In case if the input number is 0, we want to print the number as 0. If anything other than 0, we want to print even number or odd number. So in this case, what we have to do is we have to add one more condition. If input number is equal to 0, I'm going to print here console.writeLine, the number is 0. Okay, and then I'm going to put here else if, and then else. So in case if you have more than 2 options, so you have to take let's take you have multiple options, like 4 options you have, and you have to select one option from this. Then in that case you have to use if, else if, else if, else, like that you have to use. The last one should be else and remaining all in the middle should be else if, and the first one will be if condition. If any one of the conditions satisfies, it will directly skip after this if else condition. If any one condition satisfies, it will not check for the other conditions. Okay, so let's see this now. I'm going to put here input number as 0, and just to check what happens, how the flow will be. So now I'm going to put a breakpoint, click on the leftmost side, the red dot indicates that it's a breakpoint. Now I'm going to run this and let's see. Now I just clicked on the start button. Now you can see here that the breakpoint is hit here. So now let me press F10. So I'm going to press F10 and now it's checking for the condition input number is 0. So now the condition is satisfied. Now it will not check for else if and else conditions. So once the condition, any one condition satisfies, it will directly jump outside those conditions, all the conditions. So now it came to console.readLine and now we can see the output here as the number is 0. Okay, so now let's initialize the number with some other value and let's see what happens. I'm going to initialize to 4 and let's put the breakpoint again, and I'm going to run the code now to see how the flow happens now. Now input number is 4, so obviously the first condition will not satisfy. Let me press F10. Now it will come to this else if, and now the condition will check, and if the condition is satisfied, it will directly go to so the condition is satisfied because 4 modulo 2 is 0. So now it will go to console.readLine. Okay, so this is a simple example for if else and if else if else condition. With that, let's see what we have in the slides. Okay, so we just learned about if else condition. We also learned about if else if and else condition, how to write coding, and let's see the next one. So coming to switch case, so in case if we want to take decision from more than 3, so in that case it's always good to go for switch case where you can take decision from multiple options. So let's see a simple example for switch case. Okay, so now let's assume that we have a requirement for reading a number from 0 to 5, so and then print it inwards. So let's put the requirement read number from 0 to 5, or let's put 1 to 5 and print the number inwards. Okay, and if the number is greater than 5, print as invalid number. Okay, so this is our requirement. So first we want to read the number from the user and print the number inwards, and if the number is greater than 5, we want to print it as invalid number. So we can do this using if else, but let's see how to do it using a switch case. Okay, so now I'm going to modify this and let me modify this code now. So I have input number as 4 and switch and input number, and we are going to write here case. So let me put it here. So now case 1, console.writeLine, if the number is 1, I'm going to write 1, and we have to write break statement here. So now we will discuss on that, why we need to use break statement. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it now case 2, case 3, case 4, case 5, and the default one. So now I'm going to modify this. So case 2 and case 3 and case 4, case 5, and the last one will be default. So let's see now, default case. Now I'm going to change it to 2. I'm going to change it to 2, and here as 3, and here as 4, and here as 5, and here after 5, if we enter as per our requirement, we have to display here as invalid number. Okay, so now let's say this. Now I'm going to give some now let me run this. So input number is 4, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and let's run this now. Let's see what will be the output now. So I'm just executing this. You can see that the breakpoint is hit now. So now I'm going input number. You can see here that the value of this input number is 4. Input number, the value is 4, and now let me press F10. So directly it went to case 4 because we are passing here as number 4. It directly went to case 4, and now let me press F10. Now break will take outside for loop, outside switch case. Okay, so now it came to console.readline. So we are going to learn about jump statements in couple of lectures later. So where we will learn about break, continue, go to, and return. Okay, so this is a simple example for switch case. Now very important point here is break statement is mandatory in switch cases. If you have any statements here, you must use break statement, break for sure if you have any statements here. Okay, now in other programming languages, like if you take C language, you don't need a break statement, it will fall through. If you don't use break statement, the command will fall through other case as well. But in this case, you in C#, if you have statements, remember I'm using the word if you have statements, then break is mandatory. See here, I'm going to remove this break, and let's see how the control will execute, how we will get an error. So I'm going to remove this break statement, and let's build this, or let's run this. Now I'm getting an error, and let's see what the error is. So control cannot fall through from one case to other case. So if we have, so since we have statement here, we cannot fall through to other statement. But remember, if we don't have statements, break is optional. So what does it mean by that? So let's change our requirement now. Read the number from 1 to 5, and to print, so let's print like this. So read if the number is, let's take like this, number is less than 5, display as less than 5, else display as invalid number. So in this case, what I can do is we can simply use an if else condition in this case. But since, let's see how do we illustrate using this switch case. Okay, so now I'm going to put here, ideally we should use if else condition here just to understand just to ensure that you guys understand switch case. I'm going to help you. So in this case we don't have statements, so I'm simply going to put here console.writeLine less than 5, and in default I'm going to put invalid number. See here, so in that case you don't have a break statement, so what will happen now is it will fall through and it will directly come to less than 5. So let me run this now. Now you can see here the breakpoint is hit now. Now I'm going to press F10. So directly it fall through, and directly it came through less than 5, and it's printing the output. Ideally, anyway, in this requirement we have to use if else to check whether the number is less than 5 or not. So the classic example for switch case using like this is to check whether the entered character is oval or not. So let's do that now. So I'm going to put here char, so char input character is equal to E. So now what I'll do here, I'm going to write here input character. Now remember, for characters we use single code here, so or you can use A and then, so this is a character, so let me put here A, and here we'll use E, and here we'll use, so we are actually doing AEI, and for numbers we don't need to use AEIO, we don't need to use single quotes for numbers, and here U, and in any other case it will be a consonant, so here we'll put as the input character is vowel, and in case of default none of this, then it will be consonant. Okay, so let's run this code. So here this is single, so double quotes we use for strings, so we have to use here E, single quotes. Now let's run this. I have breakpoint as it is now, and I'm going to run this code. So now breakpoint is at here. Now let me press F10. So I'm going to press F10. Now you can see that it directly came to U, and now break, and let me press F10. Now let me continue executing it. Okay, so now we can see the output here. The input character is vowel, so we are seeing the output. Now let me change it to some K or P, which is a consonant. So now let me run this. Now again breakpoint will hit now, so now it will directly go to default statement. So let me press F10, and so it came to default because it didn't satisfy any of this. Okay, let me execute this. So one point to note here is, if you have any statements in case blocks, so you must use a break statement, you cannot fall through. But if you don't have any statements like this, break is optional, and now it will fall through and it will go to this one. Okay, so we saw a couple of examples for switch case and how we use switch case here. So normally if you have more than 3 statements and you have to make decision, then it's always good to go for switch case. Otherwise we can go for if else condition. Okay, so now let's come back and see what's there for us in slides. Okay, now we saw the demo. Now we saw a simple demo for switch case. Now let's learn about looping. So this is very important to understand looping. So looping is used for iteration purpose, and let's see some examples of looping. So to print hello 5 times, so instead of writing console.writeLine 5 times, it's always good to use printf console.writeLine in a for loop for I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 5, I plus plus, and you can actually use console.writeLine in a for loop. So looping is used for doing same type of functionality multiple times. Okay, the first example is to print hello 5 times, and let's see one more example. To find sum of n natural numbers. So in this case what we have to do is we have to find 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus, so we are doing addition n number of times, so we are repeating same addition n number of times. So that is the place where we can also use looping for finding sum of n natural numbers. And let's see one more example. And to check whether the number is a prime number or not, so how do we check whether the number is prime number or not? So we have to divide the input number. We have to divide the input number from 1 to n, and then if it is only divisible by 2 times, then we can display it as a prime number. So we will loop through from 1 to n, so and we will check whether the number is divisible. So in that case also we can use loops. Okay, so let's see the simple syntax for a for loop. Okay, first, this is a general syntax for a for loop for initialization, and then limiting condition, and increment or decrement. So first initialization, and then it will check for the condition, and then it will go inside statements. And let's see now. Remember, initialization for loop will happen only once. Okay, so let's see. First initialization, and then check for the condition, then the statements will be executed. Remember this flow: first initialization, then check for the condition, then the statements, then it comes to increment or decrement, and then it will go, once it increments, again it will check for the condition. Okay, so So this is the cycle. First initialization will happen only once, then limit condition check, and this iteration will happen as long as the condition is satisfied. So once when the condition is fails, loop iteration will stop. Okay, so now let's see, let's try to understand some output. So before we jump in, let's see some examples. Before we come to this example, let's see a small demo about a for loop. Okay, now I'm going to change this code to illustrate you how to implement a for loop to print hello 5 times. See here, I need to stop the project in order to change the code. I just stopped it. So now let me come back here. So now I'm going to write a for loop for int I counter is equal to 1, I counter less than or equal to 5, I counter plus plus, and now I'm going to write here console.writeLine. I'm going to print hello. See here, now I am going to increase the font a little bit just to understand, just to ensure you understand the flow. So let me increase the font size. Now I'm going to put a breakpoint here, and let's run this. So first time, let me put a breakpoint a little bit above now. So just to show you how the flow happens, I'm going to put the breakpoint here. So now let's run this code. Okay, so the breakpoint has come now. So as of now, the statement is not yet executed. That's why I counter is 0. So now let me press F10. I'm going to press F10 now. F10. So now you can see that it's checking for the condition. First initialization happened, the statement is executed. Now when I move the mouse on the cursor, you can notice that the I counter value is 1. You can notice here that I counter value is 1. Now the condition is being checked. So now let me press F10. Now it comes inside, the statements are hello is printed. Now I counter value now becomes 2. So let me put this a little bit here so that we'll see the output as well. And you can see the output here, hello got printed once. Now let me press F10. So I'm going to press F10 now. Now I counter is 2. So now hello is printed second time. Now I counter is 3. Hello 3 less than 5. Hello is printed. I counter is 4. 4 less than or equal to 5. Hello will be printed. Now I counter is 5. 5 less than or equal to 5. It is true. Hello is printed. Now the condition, it will be 6 now. So 6 less than or equal to 5. The condition will fail. So now it will come outside. So this is how a for loop will work. Okay, so let me execute this. So now we are saying hello printed 5 times. Okay, so now let's see one more example. I'm going to modify this code to print I counter value. So I don't want to print hello, let me print I counter value. So now let's run this. This will execute the same way how I explained before, and let me put the output window here, and now I'm going to press F10. So now first initialization, remember initialization will happen only once. Now condition checking, now it will print I counter value. Right side you can see 1. Now I counter 2, 2 less than or equal to 5, it will print 2. 3 less than or equal to 5 prints 3. 4 less than or equal to 5 prints 4, and 5 less than or equal to 5, it prints now 5. Now I counter value becomes 6, it will come outside. Okay, so that is how the flow happens. And now let's try to understand what will be the output for some code snippets. So in this case, we have a for loop, and from 1 to 5, and we have 2 statements here. Now we normally tend to assume that these 2 statements will belong to for loop, and that's not true. Okay, so when we don't have flower brackets for a for loop, then only one statement will be considered to be inside this for loop. Okay, although the indentation here is given to confuse, but only one statement will belongs to for loop if you don't have flower brackets like this. Okay, so now this loop will iterate from 1 to 5, and this only one statement will be iterated, and this hello 5 times will be printed, and after this for loop it will come here, and this 1 time will be printed. So the total, now the output will be 6 times. Hello will be printed 6 times. Remember, if we don't have flower brackets for a for loop, only one statement will be considered inside a for loop. Okay, so let's see the other one. Let's see the modified version of it. Now we have added this flower brackets here, Now these two statements are considered to belongs to this for loop, and every time when I counter is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these two statements are executed. So 2 into 5, so the output now will be 10 times hello. Okay, so let's see one more example to understand for loop now. So now we have a for loop here, and one point to observe here is that we have a semicolon here. So when we have a semicolon here, that will terminate the for loop. So this console.writeLine hello will not come under this for loop. So now the loop will iterate by itself here only, and it will iterate here only. It will not consider this console.writeLine hello inside the for loop. Okay, so now hello will be printed only one time after this loop iterates itself here. Okay, and now remember, a semicolon for loop is same as a for loop without any statements in it. So that is the reason why this console.writeLine is not considered to be inside this for loop. Okay, so now let's see one more example and understand one more code snippet. Now, so this question was asked to me in one of the interviews when I have almost like 2 years of experience. And see here, I counter, we initialized it, and we are checking for a condition, and surprise, we don't have initial increment or decrement here. We have a statement. So we normally tend to think that this output for this is a compilation error, but that's not true. So this is not a compilation error. So it will execute as per the logic, as per the flow which I have explained in the previous slides. So it will check for initialization, condition, and it will increment, and then it will print here I counter. So first time I counter will be printed as 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So the output for this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this we have to remember. So let's see the same thing in Visual Studio. So I'm going to put int I counter, and I'm going to write for I counter is equal to 1, I counter less than or equal to 5, and here we are going to use console.writeLine. I'm going to put here I counter. Okay, so now what I have put here, I'm putting here I counter plus plus, and anyway I'm going to use console.readline. So now let's see this now. I'm going to execute this code now. First I'm going to put a breakpoint, and if the breakpoint is hit, that indicates that there are no compilation errors, right? So now we will see this here. Now the breakpoint is hit, so that clearly indicates that there is no error in the code. So now let's see what will be the output now. So I'm going to press F10, and let's try to understand the path. So now it's checking for condition, and as per the flow which we learned in the previous slides, it will come to I counter plus plus. Now it will go to console.writeLine. So now you can see the right hand side output window. You can see that 2 is printed. Now it will increment, 3 will be printed, 4 less than or equal to 3 less than or equal to 5. It will print 4, and 4 less than or equal to 5. Now it will become 5. It will print now 5 less than or equal to 5. It will increment it to 6. Now 6 less than or equal to 5. The condition will fail. Now it will come outside. So the output in this case very clearly visible that the output is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So let's go to the slides and see what's there in store for us in the next slide. So remember, next time when you see code something like this, it's not a compilation error. It will display the output. The syntax for loop is not necessarily that you always should have increment or decrement here. It's not necessary. You can have statements there. Okay, so let's see the next slide. So with that, so just to summarize, we learned about if else else condition, and we learned about switch case, and we learned that if you have any statements in switch case, break is mandatory, and if we don't have any statements, break is not mandatory. It will fall through the cases. And we also learned that in case if you are using switch case for a character, you have to use single quotes for character. Okay, and then we learned about for loop. We saw the syntax, general syntax for loop, and we iterated for loop. We did some examples, and we also some code snippets to predict the output. And in the next lecture, lecture 7, we are going to learn about while and do while loop. Okay, so let's see the next slide. So now it's the time for you to take quiz application, to take quiz. So you can find quiz in the description, YouTube video description of this video. and do click on the link and take the quiz, and do remember to share with all your friends, and do subscribe for more videos. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.